Hello, and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace, while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the Finnish city of Helsinki during its magical summer season. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The June morning in Helsinki was luminous in a way that felt almost unreal. Lyla woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains of her hotel room, bright and clear, the kind of light that comes from being so far north in summer, when the sun barely dips below the horizon. She checked her phone. Just past 7 in the morning, but the light made it feel like mid-afternoon. She dressed in comfortable layers, mindful that even summer mornings in Helsinki could be cool, especially near the water. Her hotel was in the city center, within walking distance of most of the places she wanted to visit. After a breakfast of dark rye bread, cheese, smoked salmon, and strong coffee, she set out towards Senate Square. The walk took her through streets that felt orderly and calm, with none of the chaos she associated with larger European capitals. The buildings were elegant without being ostentatious, their facades painted in soft yellows and blues and greens. Trams glided past on their rails, their bells chiming gently. The few people she passed moved without hurry, and there was a quietness to the city that Lyla found immediately appealing. Senate Square opened before her, a large cobblestoned plaza surrounded by neoclassical buildings painted in shades of yellow and white. At the center stood a statue of Alexander II, and at the top of a broad flight of granite steps rose Helsinki Cathedral, its white facade and green domes gleaming in the morning light. Lyla climbed the steps slowly, pausing halfway to turn and look back over the square. From this vantage point she could see the government palace on one side, the University of Helsinki on the other, and the National Library at the far end. The square had a formal, almost austere beauty, but it was softened by the morning light and the presence of a few early visitors sitting on the steps, drinking coffee from paper cups. The cathedral itself was striking in its simplicity. Unlike the ornate churches she'd visited in other parts of Europe, Helsinki Cathedral was spare and elegant, its interior painted entirely white, with minimal decoration. The effect was peaceful rather than cold, a kind of Nordic minimalism that invited contemplation rather than overwhelming the senses. She sat in one of the pews for a few minutes, appreciating the quiet. Light poured through the tall windows, illuminating the white walls and columns. A few other visitors moved through the space, but no one spoke above a whisper. The silence felt intentional, meaningful. Outside again, Lyla descended the steps and made her way toward Market Square, a short walk toward the harbor. The square was already busy with vendors setting up their stalls. There were produce stands with fresh berries, strawberries, raspberries, even cloudberries, which Lyla had read about but never tried. There were flower stalls with summer blooms, crafts vendors selling handmade woolens and wooden items, and food stands offering everything from salmon soup to fresh cinnamon buns. The harbour spread beyond the market, the water a deep blue under the clear June sky. Ferries and boats moved across the water, and seagulls wheeled overhead calling to each other. The air smelled of salt and fish, and something green from the nearby parks. Lyla bought a cinnamon bun from one of the food stalls. Korvapuusti, the vendor called it, literally slapped ears because of the pastry's distinctive shape. She found a bench near the water's edge and ate it slowly, watching the harbour activity. The bun was excellent, buttery and rich, with plenty of cinnamon and cardamom, not too sweet. She'd planned to take the ferry to Suomenlinna, a sea fortress built on a cluster of islands just offshore. The ferry departed from the Market Square's terminal, and Lyla bought her ticket and joined the queue of locals and tourists waiting to board. The ferry was practical rather than picturesque, a working vessel that transported both people and bicycles. Lyla found a spot on the outdoor deck, leaning against the railing as the boat pulled away from the dock. The crossing took only about 15 minutes, but the perspective shift was immediate. Helsinki's skyline receded behind them, the cathedral's green domes still visible, while ahead the islands of Suomenlinna grew larger and more detailed. The fortress had been built in the 18th century, Lyla knew from her reading, originally by the Swedes and later expanded by the Russians. Now it was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, with about 800 residents living among the historic fortifications. The ferry docked at the main island, and passengers disembarked, scattering in various directions. Lyla had no fixed plan, just a desire to wander and explore. She followed a path that led away from the dock, past residential houses painted in muted colors, ochre and rust and pale green. Laundry hung from lines in a few yards, and she could hear children playing somewhere nearby, their voices carrying on the still air. The fortress itself was fascinating, not a single imposing structure but rather a network of walls, ramparts, tunnels and buildings spread across the islands. Lyla walked along the top of stone walls that had been built to withstand naval bombardment, the views opening up on both sides, the sea stretching toward the horizon on one side, sheltered bays and smaller islands on the other. She explored tunnels that cut through the fortifications, their walls cool stone, their passages leading to courtyards and gun emplacements, and sudden vistas of water and sky. Some sections were maintained as museums, while others had been left in a state of dignified decay, grass growing between stones, walls crumbling in picturesque fashion. The coastal paths were beautiful, winding along the water's edge, sometimes climbing over rocky outcrops, sometimes descending to small beaches. Wild roses grew along the paths, their pink blooms cheerful against the grey stone of the fortifications. Lyla passed other visitors, families on outings, couples holding hands, solo walkers like herself, but the islands were large enough that it never felt crowded. She found a quiet spot on the ramparts overlooking the sea, and sat down on the sun-warmed stone. A few sailboats drifted past, their sails catching the light breeze. Closer to shore, someone was kayaking, their paddle dipping rhythmically into the water. The sound of waves against rocks provided a gentle soundtrack, and Lyla felt herself relaxing into the moment, content to simply sit and observe. After exploring for a couple of hours, she made her way back to the main island, and found a small cafe near the dock. She ordered salmon soup, lohikeito, and sat at an outdoor table to wait for her lunch. The soup arrived in a generous bowl, creamy and pale, with chunks of salmon, potatoes, carrots and dill. It was simple and delicious, the kind of food that felt nourishing in a fundamental way. She ate it with dark rye bread, letting each spoonful warm her from the inside. The ferry ride back to Helsinki was just as pleasant as the journey out, the city growing larger as they approached, the afternoon light giving everything a golden cast. Back at Market Square, Lyla decided to head toward the design district, an area she'd been curious about. The walk took her through streets lined with boutiques, galleries and cafes. The design district wasn't a single location but rather a neighborhood where Finnish design shops and studios clustered. Lyla had a particular interest in Finnish design, its combination of functionality and beauty, its connection to nature, its understated elegance. She started at Marimekko, the iconic Finnish textile and clothing company. The shop was bright and colorful, filled with the bold patterns and vibrant colors Marimekko was known for. Lyla browsed through racks of dresses and tunics, shelves of bags and accessories, displays of home textiles. The patterns were distinctive: large-scale florals, geometric shapes, abstract forms in unexpected color combinations. She ended up buying a small pouch in the famous Unico poppy pattern, its red flowers bold against a white background. Next was Iittala, known for glassware and ceramics. The shop was a study in restraint and beauty, clean lines, pure forms, pieces that were designed to be both functional and sculptural. Lyla admired the glassware, particularly the alto vases with their organic wave-like forms. She picked up pieces to feel their weight and quality, running her fingers over the smooth glass. She bought a small bowl in a pale blue color, imagining it on her kitchen counter at home, holding fruit or keys or whatever small objects accumulated in daily life. Artek was her final stop, a furniture and design shop founded by the architect Alvar Aalto and his wife Aino in the 1930s. The showroom displayed furniture that was now considered classic: bentwood chairs, sleek tables, lighting that managed to be both artistic and practical. Lyla sat in one of the chairs, appreciating the way it supported her body, the warmth of the wood, the elegance of the design. She bought a small alto vase, a classic piece that she'd wanted for years, but had never gotten around to purchasing. After a short walk to her hotel to deposit her shopping bags, Lyla made her way to Oodi, Helsinki's central library, which had opened a few years earlier to considerable acclaim. The building was striking even from the outside, a modern structure with a curved wooden facade that seemed to flow upward, its design both contemporary and somehow organic. Inside, the library was even more impressive. The ground floor was open and inviting, with a cafe, exhibition spaces, and areas for various activities. Lyla took the escalator up, rising through the building's levels. The second floor housed more traditional library functions, workspaces, meeting rooms, studios for music, and media production. But it was the third floor that took her breath away. The entire top floor was one vast open space, a reading room with floor-to-ceiling windows providing panoramic views of the city. The ceiling was made of wood, its curved beams creating a warm, enveloping canopy overhead. Books lined the walls, but the space felt more like a public living room than a traditional library, with comfortable seating areas, reading nooks, and long tables where people worked on laptops or read in companionable silence. Lyla walked to the windows and looked out over Helsinki. She could see the cathedral's domes, the harbour with its boats, the green spaces of parks and squares, the orderly grid of streets. The view was spectacular, but what struck her most was the library itself. The fact that a city would create such a beautiful public space, free and open to everyone, designed not just for function but for pleasure and community. She found a comfortable chair near one of the windows and sat down, content to rest for a while. Around her, people of all ages were reading, studying, chatting quietly. Children played in a designated area, while parents kept watchful eyes on them. An elderly man was reading a newspaper. A teenager was sketching in a notebook. A young couple was sharing a laptop screen. The library felt alive, a space that served its community in ways that went beyond just lending books. After spending a peaceful hour at Oodi, Lyla left and walked toward Esplanade Park, a long green space that ran through the heart of the city. The early evening light was still bright. It was June, after all, and this far north, darkness wouldn't arrive until well past midnight. The park was busy but not crowded, its paths lined with linden trees and benches occupied by people enjoying the beautiful evening. A small stage at one end of the park hosted a free concert. Acoustic guitar music, mellow and pleasant. Lyla walked the length of the park, pausing occasionally to watch street performers or to admire the flower beds that bordered the paths. The atmosphere was relaxed and convivial. People sat on the grass in small groups, some with picnics, others just talking and laughing. The long days of summer seemed to encourage people to be outside, to linger, to enjoy the warmth and light while they lasted. Lyla found an empty bench and sat down, watching the scene around her. There was something peaceful about observing public life like this, about seeing people at ease and enjoying themselves. A young couple walked past, pushing a stroller, deep in conversation. A group of teenagers sat cross-legged on the grass, passing around a guitar. An older woman walked a small dog, pausing to let it sniff at trees and interesting spots on the ground. As the evening stretched on, Lyla decided it was time for her final Helsinki experience, a traditional Finnish sauna. She'd booked a session at Löyly, a public sauna on the waterfront that had received rave reviews for its architecture and its authentic sauna experience. The building itself was striking, a contemporary structure clad in heat-treated wood, its angular forms jutting out toward the sea. Inside, the design was warm and welcoming, all wood and stone and natural materials. Lyla paid her entrance fee and was directed to the changing rooms. The facility had both wood-heated and electric saunas, as well as a smoke sauna, the traditional Finnish style, where the sauna is heated for several hours by a wood fire, then aired out before use, leaving the room hot and fragrant with wood smoke. Lyla decided to start with the smoke sauna. Inside, the heat was intense but not uncomfortable, a dry heat that made her skin tingle. The walls were darkened from years of smoke, and the air had a faint, pleasant scent of burnt wood. She ladled water onto the hot stones, Löyly, the steam was called, and felt the burst of even more intense heat wash over her. Other women were in the sauna, some chatting quietly in Finnish, others sitting in contemplative silence. There was an ease and naturalness to it all. Bodies of all ages and shapes, everyone comfortable in their own skin. focused on the heat and the experience, rather than on appearance or self-consciousness. After a few rounds in the sauna, Lyla ventured outside to the sea-facing deck, where brave souls could cool off by jumping into the Baltic Sea. The water looked cold, very cold, but she decided to try it. The shock of the icy water took her breath away, and she gasped and laughed simultaneously, quickly climbing back up the ladder onto the deck. The contrast between the hot sauna and the cold sea was exhilarating. Her skin tingled, her body felt alive and energized. She wrapped herself in a towel and sat on one of the deck chairs, feeling the evening breeze dry her skin while her body temperature gradually normalized. She repeated the cycle several times: sauna, cold plunge, rest on the deck, each round bringing a deeper sense of relaxation. There was something meditative about the ritual, about the focus on physical sensation, about the surrender to heat and cold, and the body's responses to both. Other saunagoers moved through the same cycles, and there was a kind of camaraderie in the shared experience, even among strangers. Someone would emerge from the cold water gasping and grinning, and others would nod knowingly, having just done the same thing themselves. Eventually thoroughly warm and relaxed, Lyla showered and dressed, her skin glowing from the heat and cold, her body feeling simultaneously energized and deeply peaceful. She left Löyly and walked along the waterfront, the evening still bright, the city bathed in that peculiar northern summer light that seemed to erase the boundaries between day and night. She found a restaurant nearby, a casual place with outdoor seating overlooking the water. Dinner was simple and satisfying: reindeer with lingonberry sauce, a traditional Finnish dish. The meat was tender and rich, the berries providing a tart sweet contrast. She ordered a glass of Finnish cider to accompany it, crisp and refreshing after the heat of the sauna. As she ate, she watched the water and the sky, the light shifting almost imperceptibly as the evening progressed. Other diners chatted around her, their voices blending with the cry of seagulls and the gentle lap of water against the shore. The air was cool but not cold, pleasant against her still warm skin. She thought about the day, the austere beauty of the cathedral, the busy life of the market square, the exploration of Suomenlinna's fortifications and coastal paths, the elegant simplicity of Finnish design in Marimekko and Iittala and Baltic, the unexpected wonder of Oodi Library, the peaceful evening in Esplanadi Park, and the intense, cleansing ritual of the sauna. Helsinki had revealed itself as a city of contrasts, modern yet connected to tradition, urban yet close to nature, designed yet organic. There was a quietness to it that wasn't empty but full, a sense of space and breath that felt increasingly rare in a crowded world. After dinner, Lyla walked slowly back toward her hotel, taking the long route through streets that were still active despite the late hour. The white nights of June meant that sleep seemed almost optional, that time itself felt more fluid and expansive. She passed cafes with their windows glowing warmly, small parks where people still gathered, shops just beginning to close for the evening. The trams continued their routes, bells chiming at intersections. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear music, live music from a bar or restaurant, the sound drifting on the still air. Back at her hotel, Lyla paused in the lobby before heading up to her room. Through the windows she could see the street outside, still bright with that strange summer light. She thought about how different Helsinki felt from other cities she'd visited. Quieter, calmer, more balanced somehow. There was a thoughtfulness to it, a sense that beauty and function could coexist, that public spaces could be truly public, that design could serve both aesthetic and practical purposes. She made her way up to her room, her body still carrying the warmth and relaxation from the sauna, her mind peaceful and content. The day had been full but not rushed, busy but never frantic. Helsinki had offered her exactly what she needed. Beauty and culture, yes, but also space and quiet, a chance to move at her own pace and observe without pressure. Lyla opened the window to let in the cool evening air and the sounds of the city. She could hear footsteps on the pavement below, the distant hum of a tram, voices speaking Finnish in soft, lilting tones. The light outside was still bright enough to read by, and it would remain so for hours yet, the sun barely dipping below the horizon before beginning its ascent again. She sat in the chair by the window, simply watching and listening, her body relaxed, her mind quiet. Tomorrow might bring more exploration, or it might bring something else entirely. But for now, there was just this moment, the gentle light, the soft sounds of the city, the lingering warmth from the sauna, the sense of peace that had settled over her like a comfortable blanket.